Namaste and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're here to cut right through all the noise and give you a straight-up brief on the big headlines shaping India and the world. Our goal is to really connect the dots between major policy decisions, the economy, and how it all affects your daily life. So let's just get right to the facts. It is Thursday, July 31st, and believe me, we have a lot to get through today. We're going to kick things off with some major economic shifts that are having immediate consequences. Then we'll pivot to some domestic tensions bubbling up. And finally, we'll take a look at India's ever-evolving role on the world stage. You see, our whole approach here is really simple. We give you the context, the real story behind the headlines, so that you can form your own conclusions. We're all about fostering thinkers, not followers. So with that, let's begin. Okay, let's dive right in. We're starting with the big economic stories that are really setting the tone for India today and honestly, probably for the next few weeks. And the first piece of news is a really significant trade action coming out of the United States that has sent immediate shockwaves all the way through the market. So that number you see, 25%. That is the new blanket tariff that the United States has just slapped on all Indian imports. Now, according to the official announcement, this is set to kick in tomorrow, August 1st. But there's another wrinkle here. The sources also point to an additional, though right now unspecified, penalty. And this penalty is directly linked to India's energy and military dealings with Russia. So this just adds another layer of complexity and pressure to what was already a very tense situation. It's a multi-front trade challenge for sure. And when you look at the justifications from both sides, you see this really stark contrast in how they're viewing the situation. The U.S. is pointing fingers at India's own high tariffs, what they're calling obnoxious trade barriers, in a general frustration over trade talks that have basically gone nowhere. Now, in response, the government of India has been incredibly firm, vowing to take, and I quote, all necessary steps to protect its national interest. This really sets the stage for a major economic and diplomatic showdown.
And, well, the immediate fallout from that tariff news, it hit the currency markets, and it hit them hard. The Indian rupee took a really sharp dive, falling by 52 paise to close at a provisional 87.43 against the US dollar. Now listen, this isn't just some number on a screen. A weaker rupee means that the cost of everything we import, we're talking crude oil, electronics, you name it, it all goes up. It's a direct learn from an international policy decision straight to our domestic economy.
But this big drop wasn't just caused by the tariff news in a vacuum. It was the main trigger, no doubt. It created all this uncertainty, but it was made worse by two other key factors that were already in play. You had the seasonal month-end demand for dollars from importers, and on top of that, a continued outflow of foreign funds from our markets. It's really a perfect storm of pressure on the rupee. And why does it matter? Because it has the direct potential to fuel inflation right here at home. Now, shifting our focus away from international trade for a moment and looking at our domestic fiscal health, we see another challenge brewing. The combined fiscal deficit of India's 17 largest states has widened to a frankly staggering 9.5 trillion rupees. To put that in perspective, that's 3.2% of their gross state domestic product. The reports say this increase is being driven by higher revenue deficits. What that basically means is states are spending more on their day-to-day expenses than they're bringing in, and that has a real knock-on effect because it restricts their ability to borrow money for those big, long-term projects, things like roads, schools, and hospitals, because they're bumping up against fiscal discipline rules. Okay, next up, we're turning to the domestic landscape. And what we're seeing are some pretty significant tensions playing out across several different arenas. We're talking about parliament, the world of sports, and even in our high courts. This quote, a gross insult to the House. It's incredibly powerful, and it comes directly from the floor of the Rajya Sabha. What happened was the India bloc, led by Mallikarjun Kharge, staged a walkout. And this was during a really critical debate on the recent Pahalgam terror attack. And the reason for the walkout? They were demanding that Prime Minister Modi himself reply to the debate. His absence was described in those exact words, and it ultimately prompted the entire opposition to walk out in protest. It just goes to show you the deep political divide right now on how to handle very sensitive national security issues. And those same geopolitical tensions we just talked about in Parliament have now cascaded right into the sports arena. In a really major development, the India champions cricket team, the one with legendary players like Yuvraj Singh, they officially pulled out of their World Championship of Legends semifinal match against Pakistan. The stated reason for forfeiting the match was to prioritize national sentiment in the wake of the Pahalgam attack. So as a result, Pakistan was just given a walkover and they've advanced to the final by default. It's a stark reminder of how deeply political events can impact even our sporting ties. Now, let's head to the judicial front, where the Bombay High Court has just brought a really critical legal and ethical dilemma into the spotlight. The court issued a very strong rebuke to the police over a practice of compelling doctors to disclose the identities of minor girls who seek abortions. The core issue here is what's being called a rights conflict, and it's a truly complex clash between three very important principles. You have laws that might require reporting of certain crimes, you have the doctor's secret ethical duty of patient confidentiality, and then you have the fundamental right to privacy for a minor in a very, very sensitive healthcare situation. The court's observation here is a crucial moment for medical ethics and the rights of minors in India.
And staying with the judiciary, the Supreme Court itself is now scrutinizing the conduct of one of its own. The court made some really critical remarks about a judge, Justice Varma, who had challenged an internal inquiry process, calling it extra-constitutional. But here's the thing, the Supreme Court pointed out, the timing. The judge only challenged it after the inquiry's outcome proved to be, in the court's own words, unpalatable. The court then highlighted that this inquiry process has been the established law for 30 years, which raises some serious questions about internal accountability, even within the highest levels of our judiciary.
All right, let's pivot now from domestic issues to India's engagement with the rest of the world. In this section, we're going to look at two very different but equally important stories. One is about strengthening diplomatic ties in a key strategic region, and the other is about a landmark achievement in scientific collaboration that literally reaches for the stars. First up, diplomacy. The sixth round of India-Fiji Foreign Office consultations just wrapped up in Suva. And you know, these talks are absolutely crucial for deepening our strategic ties. The discussions really honed in on strengthening cooperation across all sorts of sectors. And what's really notable is that Fiji expressed its solidarity with India in the global fight against terrorism, and they specifically referenced the Pahalgam attack. This kind of engagement is a key part of reinforcing India's strategic presence and its partnerships in the really vital Pacific region.
And now for a major milestone in space. The NISR satellite, this is a joint mission between NASA and our very own ISRO, has been successfully launched from the Satish Dhawan Space Center. This is a monumental achievement, truly. This $1.5 billion partnership represents the most sophisticated Earth-observing radar system ever built, and it was launched on an Indian GSLV rocket. Its purpose? To track tiny millimeter-scale changes on the Earth's land and ice surfaces. The data it's going to collect will be absolutely invaluable for climate research and, so importantly, for disaster management and early warnings.
Okay, let's broaden our view now to the international stage, because there are three major events that are capturing global attention. We're going to cover a massive natural disaster off the coast of Russia, a pretty big diplomatic shift in Europe concerning the Middle East, and a key decision out of the United States that's going to influence financial markets all around the world. A truly massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck off the eastern coast of Russia. Now, just to put that into perspective for you, this is the sixth strongest earthquake ever recorded. It's approaching the same intensity as those devastating quakes in Japan in 2011 and Sumatra back in 2004. The event triggered widespread tsunami warnings all across the Pacific, including for Japan, Hawaii, and Russia itself. 2 million people were ordered to evacuate. And even though the worst of the threat seems to have passed now, 24 hours later, tsunami waves were still reported to have hit the U.S. West Coast. Thankfully, as of right now, no immediate casualties have been reported globally.
Now, there is a very significant diplomatic shift underway in Europe. Following France's lead, the United Kingdom has announced that it will recognize a Palestinian state by September. Malta has made a similar announcement. But, and this is a crucial condition, it will only happen unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire and commits to a two-state solution. This move, as you can imagine, has been strongly condemned by the Israeli Prime Minister, who called it a reward for terrorism. That's a characterization that a UK minister later rejected, but it just shows you the immense diplomatic pressure being applied right now.
And in financial news that really echoes across the entire globe, the U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to hold its key interest rate steady. The target range is staying put at 4.25% to 4.5%. So what's the official reasoning? Well, they're saying that while the American labor market is still solid, other recent indicators suggest that overall economic activity has kind of cooled off in the first half of the year. This decision to pause rate hikes, it impacts borrowing costs and investment decisions not just in the U.S., but for markets and central banks all over the world, including our own.
To wrap up our news roundup today, we're going to turn from all those major geopolitical and economic headlines to a really hopeful story of innovation happening right here at home. This is all about leveraging cutting-edge technology to empower the very backbone of our nation, the Indian farmer. The crucial point here is this. A new initiative has been launched to bring the power of artificial intelligence directly to our smallholder farmers. The platform is called ISAT, and it's a collaboration led by the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, or ICRISAT, with support from the government. What it's going to do is deliver hyper-local, actionable advice on those critical farming decisions like when to sow, how much to irrigate, and how to manage pests. This isn't just about data. It's a real tool for enhancing climate resilience and truly empowering farmers to adapt and to thrive in what is an increasingly unpredictable world. And that is our factual brief for today. If you find this format helpful, you can get this explainer every single morning at 8 a.m. Follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m. You can support our ad-free, independent approach by subscribing over at www.OneRead.News. And of course, just sharing this explainer really helps our mission. You know, from global trade wars all the way to AI on the farm, the connections between data and our daily lives are only getting stronger. The real question is, are we prepared to navigate them? Thank you for listening. Namaskar.